How no one caught that on video I will never know, because if they did, it'd be viral and I'd probably be famous or something. But I don't know if this is creepy or what. Okay, so me and my friend are at Pizza Hut, and we just ordered our food and was waiting for it. So we sitting at our booth, talking, when all of a sudden, some dude just walked right up to where we was and just stand there. At first I was so engrossed in telling her about the last episode of Empire that I completely ignored the guy. But when I do notice him, I just kind of give him a "Hi, what can I help you with" type of smile. "I just gotta tell you, you don't understand, you gotta know," he said all loud. So me and my friend just like asking him what's wrong, and like, is he okay? And he just keeps repeating it, talking about "I just gotta know." So then the lady comes with her pizza, while the dude's still ranting about nothing, and she sits it down on the table and gives him a weird look, and he gives her one back. I can tell she just don't feel comfortable, because as soon as she sat the pizza down, she was gone. So my friend was like, "Is there something you need, sir?" And he was like, "Yes." He actually had the nerve to push my friend aside and have a seat right next to her, before looking at me and saying, "You're one fine chocolate diamond." My mouth was on the floor at this point and my friend was giving him the same look. "I think you need to go on," I said to him. Now I was disturbed. The hell's a chocolate diamond? "You look like a chocolate milkshake. I want to slurp up till the very last drop," he said, making a nasty slurping sound. I at first glanced around to see if anybody but us was hearing this insanity, before I told him to knock it off. "Oh, I see how it is. I ain't good enough, huh?" At this point, my eyebrow raised to the heavens, because clearly we had a nut job on our hands. "What is you talking about, sir? Who are you?" I asked him. "Don't act like you know me." He literally screamed this and banged his fist on the table, making me and my friend both jump. I sat all the way back away from this fool, and my poor friend was trapped between the window and him, so if he did snap, she was a goner. By now he had caught everybody's attention, and they was all looking at us. "Here," he said before taking a slice of pizza and shoving it at me. "Feed me like in them movies," he demanded. I looked from him and the pizza in shock. "Oh my God," I remember saying before looking at my friend. Hey, you hear me? You do as I say and feed this bloody slice of pizza to me now," he yelled. Thankfully the manager came over and was like, "What's the problem here?" This dude just kind of looks up at him and shrugs. "The only problem here is that you just deboed your way up in here as my wife was about to feed me this slice of pizza that I bought like in them romantic movies. Now why you gotta single us out for? You wasn't doing nothing. All I was doing was finna to be fed by my wife. Now can you please leave? You're upsetting my daughter," the dude said as he put his entire hand in my friend's hair and pulled. She immediately started screaming bloody murder and tried to pry his hand loose, and he was like, "Look what you doing to my baby girl. You're upsetting her and my wife," the guy said. "I don't know him. Get him off of her," I remember screaming, and the manager and another worker had pulled him off her, but the dude put up a fight and was slammed against our table. "Baby, help me. They're trying to rape me, baby. Don't let them do it. My booty hole too tight for this shit," the guy screamed, and all I say is, "What the fuck?" as I watched them haul him away, with him still screaming and struggling. The whole damn restaurant was looking and talking about what happened, and I was getting my purse to leave, and my friend was in hysterics. Two ladies who had been on the other side of the room came over and started asking us questions, and all I remember telling her is that I didn't know who the hell that psycho was. The manager came and asked us if we were okay and if we wanted him to phone the police. My friend immediately was like, hell yeah. So as we talking to the manager, he looked up and he looked pissed off. I didn't want to turn because I just knew that fool was behind us. Lo and behold, as soon as I turned my neck, guess who was standing right outside the window looking in? I mean, he had his entire face smushed against the window, looking dead at us. Get away from the window, the manager had yelled at him, but the man only pointed at me and made a disgusting kissing face, even going so far as to lick the glass. Oh, I've had enough of him. You all need to call 911 right now. He needs to go to jail, some older lady said. The manager had told the lady to calm down, but she was mad and told him she don't plan on calming down. I don't know who did, but the police was called, and like 5 minutes later, and the police roll up and the dude bolts. Now this is the part that I wished had gotten caught on camera. This fool running around the parking lot with only one shoe, screaming like a man who done lost his mind, and the police chasing him. All we could hear was, rape, rape. This is a story for the grandkids, I swear. I told this story to just about everybody and they all laughed, but I find it sad. Like, dude must have been drunk or high. But I think the real victim here is my friend. She's terrified of Pizza Hut now. In school, there was a creepy guy who was into me. Although I found him mildly creepy, I wasn't too fussed. Until recently, 5 years later, when a mutual friend, Bob, filled in a few disturbing blanks. I'll first explain it from my perspective, then give you the information my friend gave me. We were both uncool in school. I was really quiet and shy. I adored maths and was borderline into geek culture. I really enjoyed it but wasn't exposed to it much, as my family were quite peppy. He was full-out geek, like the majority of my friends. He also had underlying anger issues. We chatted online about the usual teenage stuff when I was 16. We had been kind of friends in school. We got the bus together, but I had clubs at lunchtime and I hung out with other people at break time. So Creepzilla, CZ, and I chat, and nothing abnormal happens. We get on well and he seems like a nice guy, although his texts are a bit too frequent. I joke about this, but he doesn't change it, so I let it go. Then out of nowhere, a guy messages me and mentions that CZ is creepy and weird. I laugh it off because people probably think I'm creepy and weird. Why won't anyone love me? Months passed. Friendship grows, then boom, he asks me out. I say no because I don't like him that way. He had really cold, clammy hands. He is very understanding. We continue to chat as friends, everything seems fine. Except it wasn't. There were a few signs at the start, example, when we ran into my ex, he would drag me away or act really cold. My ex and I were friends at this stage. He would later quiz me about my ex in an intense way. He texts me all the time, like all the time. Between waking up and period 1 chem, I would have about 12 texts, most of which I did not reply to. He wanted to know where I was, who I was with, what I was doing, all day, every day. Hanging out in chem and freeze wasn't enough. He pressured me to spend break time with him. I refused. He would glare if I spoke to anyone else in our year other than his friend group. He would slag off my ex. He really started to grate on me, and it wasn't until one day in church that I finally snapped. I told him that I was going to church, and when I checked my phone after the service, I had 30 texts, all vaguely whiny and demanding my attention. By this point, I was exhausted. He was constantly demanding my attention. I didn't have time to myself. I sent him a few short angry texts out of frustration, and hid from him on social media. He quieted down and our friendship got back on track, but I was more cold and distant. So far, so normal. Just the average teen boy being too overeager. The only creepy thing about Creepzilla was his clammy hands. Years pass. We don't keep in touch after high school. I forget about this mildly creepy guy, until a mutual friend mentions him again a few months ago. Creepzilla messaged me yesterday. He asked about you again. Really? Wait, what do you mean again? You know, you surely know. Dave was supposed to tell you. Tell me what? That Creepzilla stalked you in high school. I was so confused. While mildly irritating, Creepzilla was never a stalker. For context, Dave was my gay best friend from the same school, but he was too cool to talk to Creepzilla. When Bob mentioned the stalking, Dave told him to shut the F up. I waited for everyone else to leave that night, then quizzed Dave. The whole story came out. In first year, Bob casually mentioned to Dave that CZ had messaged him. It had the usual "Hi, how's it been" chat. But he was very interested in hearing about me. Dave pulled a face and made a comment about CZ needing to get over me. Bob made a comment about me leading him on. Dave thought this was strange. All I did was chat. Bob then replied, "But he used to go over to hers after school every day. They would hang out and cuddle. I think they kissed as well." This sounded pretty official. Dave froze. He knew me well. Like every stereotypical GBF, he knew all of my business, and he knew for a fact that CZ had never been invited into my home. He questioned Bob more deeply. It turns out that Bob saw CZ around the area where we lived, 10 miles away from CZ's home. A lot. It would always be quite late at night. He would be waiting for the bus. If Bob questioned CZ about where he was, CZ would say "at OP's" and talk about activities we did together. Dave explained to Bob that that wasn't possible. Bob got real quiet and thoughtful. Bob has been in my room since we left school. He knows what it looks like. He explains to Dave that CZ used to be able to explain my room in detail. Dave says nothing. Bob tells Dave more things like sexually explicit stories that apparently CZ and I wrote together. How CZ kept bits of my hair and other creepy things. Then he mentions the camping trip. Out of all the things Dave has heard so far, this freaks him out the most. And as he recounts this to me, I know why. CZ suggested I go camping with him and the boys during the summer between school and uni. I vaguely agree, and he says that he and the boys will plan it and let me know. Months pass, and he tells me a date in late August. We haven't really discussed it in a while, and I explain that I can no longer go because I'm going to Africa with my church. He gets pissed and doesn't talk to me for a while. I'm too busy freaking out about malaria to notice how long it's been. He contacts me one more time to wish me luck in Africa, and then doesn't message again. I lose my SIM in Africa. I change my number. I forget to tell him. I no longer use MSN. Dave knows that I would have gone camping if the dates hadn't clashed. With a sick feeling in his stomach, he questions Bob further. The trip was a romantic getaway for CZ and me. We were going to spend the whole weekend together. He was going to surprise me. I'm now 23 and less naive about the world. Since Dave told me this a few months ago, I've replayed the possible scenario in my head. Once Dave heard this story, he told Bob never to talk to me about it, and to let him explain it all to me. He left Bob's and headed over to my student flat. I was in the middle of a Bible study with the flatmates, so he waited in my room. He saw a knick-knack that CZ had bought me. He threw it out the window. He searched my room for other stuff that might be from him. He smashed an R2-D2 in case he had hidden a camera, and again chucked the remains out the window. He started to think more and more about telling me. How would it affect the happy uni life I had created? He thought of me sitting in Bible study and realized that he didn't want to damage my innocence or something. So he never did. He sneakily tried to protect me. He asked to use my laptop for a week as his broke and he had an assignment. He sent it to a friend of his to check for spyware or something. He told my closest friends to tell him if CZ ever contacted me, and he probably did a lot more. He still does. If he knows I'm home alone, he sleeps over. He would never have told me so he could protect me from the damage. I think he left out a lot because sometimes Bob says things that don't fit with his story. I have known for a few months now, and a couple of things stick in my mind. 1. How the flip did he see into my bedroom? My room is on the first floor and there isn't any handy stalker trees in my garden. 2. WT flip did he do all those days where he hung out at mine? I live in a residential area. There are literally nothing but houses. 3. What would have happened if I had gone camping? Too long, didn't read. Thought school friend was mildly creepy. Boy, was I wrong. This happened in 2013, when I was living in the city with 2 roommates, we're all women, and going to school. I wrote everything down immediately after it happened, intending to 1. Have a record of any details, should it become important later, since the police didn't want to file a report, and 2. Share it someday. Never ended up sharing it until now, having recently discovered this subreddit. This isn't a horror story so much as it is maybe a story about stumbling on the aftermath of someone else's. But I was still pretty spooked at the time. So with minor edits for context and clarity, here is that account. I live in a pretty old house. It's at least 100 years old, which is typical of the area. But the inside appears to have been gutted and remodeled at some point in its history. Mostly that translates to weirdly sized closets, but it also meant that there was no pre-designed place for the water heater to go. Putting it in the house would have sacrificed space in one of the closets, so they installed it and the heating system under the house in a crude, dirt-floored crawl space. This became relevant last month when a city utility worker needed to get to my hot water heater. The sole entrance to the crawl space is out back, under the little deck we share with the neighbouring unit. It's a little wooden door padlocked shut. It had been padlocked since I moved in. I don't even think I knew it was there for the first couple months. So I called the rental company and they sent over a guy who unlocked it, but didn't look inside. When the utility worker arrived sometime later, it was already getting dark. So I went down with her just in case she needed me to hand her anything. I felt kind of bad that she was out after standard work hours and about to crawl into the cramped, dirty, undoubtedly spidery space under my house. She opens the little door, shines her flashlight inside and goes, "That's kind of creepy, since she just told me she was used to crawl spaces and not scared of them. I started to get pretty uneasy, and fervently hoped that we had not just discovered a body. Not gonna lie, I have been low-key expecting to stumble on a corpse since I was like 5. With that in mind, what we did find was actually kind of underwhelming. Inside the cramped space under the house, lit by the tech's flashlight, was an improvised camp set up. A sleeping bag on a stack of filthy foam camping mattresses, a suitcase spilling clothes out on the dirt, a clothesline hung with yet more clothes, food and drink wrappers, stacks and stacks of newspapers. She was surprisingly chill about it. I wanted her to get out immediately so that we could call the police. Not because I thought anybody was still there, but because I was worried the improvised camp under my house might constitute some kind of crime scene. I was pretty confident that it must be old. We'd had a home invasion a couple of months ago, so we'd all been really vigilant, and I figured that since we kept to regular schedules and parked out back, we'd have seen a squatter coming and going. There was also no smell. Due to a couple of stupid decisions earlier in my youth, I discovered people squatting in abandoned buildings before, and they'd always had the odor of stale urine. But she insisted that since we had the door open, she'd go in and get the heater working again. I probably should have insisted, but she honestly didn't seem that disturbed, and I figured she knew what she was doing. She found a little pull chain connected to a bare bulb and pulled it, which lit the whole space in weak yellow light, showing her the way to the appliance. It wasn't enough to light the entire crawl space, but it was enough that I could see that whoever had lived there had made a couple of shelves out of milk crates. She fixed what she'd come to fix, and sat with me until the cops came. I kind of expected them to tell me that what I was seeing had to be something else, but actually, they refused to look in the crawl space. I suspect because it was starting to rain, and seemed to take my account at face value. They just didn't want to do anything about it, and told me that it was really my landlord's problem. Not really the response I'd expected. But whatever. It ends very anticlimactically. I called the rental agency and told them about it, and they sent a crew out to throw out all the stuff and resecure the crawl space. I was not able to be there when they did it, but I asked them to find the most recent newspaper and give me the date, so that I could get some kind of timeline from when this person had been under the house. It was June of 2011, 2 years before we'd moved in. I was able to find out from the rental guy that the house was occupied at that time, but that was all I found out. Crawlspace guy. Sorry we threw out all your shit, but let's not meet. Edit. Oh man, I just remember some of the absolute gems the responding officers spouted. They told me, among other things, that if there wasn't a no trespassing sign on the door, it wasn't technically a crime. When it became clear I didn't believe that, because that's not how property works, they doubled down and told me that actually if the squatter's residence predated ours, then we were actually trespassing because we have weird residency laws. By that point I realized they were just jerking me around because they didn't want to bother with a report. And I was alone and a woman. But I went to the campus police the next day just in case the cleanup crew discovered some kind of contraband that might be blamed on us as tenants or them as employees. The officer I got basically confirmed that the city cops were being douches because they didn't want the paperwork, and gave me her card. Thanks, campus officer.